the 2024 presidential election. That is the big story that we're tracking at this hour. In fact, he also went on to state, in order to make America great again and glorious, I'm tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. So that is Donald Trump entering into the political fray in terms of the 2024 presidential election, where we understand right now he has, of course, announced that he will be running for the 2024 presidential election. In fact, he also said, in order to make America great and glorious again, he is announcing his candidacy for the presidency of the United States. Now, what exactly did Donald Trump say? Let's listen in.
The American dream. And it's a word you don't use. Two words. I don't want to be Joe. It's two words. American dream. That was not good what he did. There are a lot of bad things, like going to Idaho and saying, welcome to the state of Florida. I really love it. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you. The American dream. And it's a word you don't use. Two words. I don't want to be Joe. It's two words. American dream. That was not good what he did. There are a lot of bad things, like going to Idaho and saying, welcome to the state of Florida. I really love it. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was, of course, Donald Trump announcing that he will be running for the 2024 presidential election. In fact, he went on in that particular speech to make a lot of comments. On one hand, he did state that, when he was the president, of course, he believed that the U.S. was at its utmost power when it came to the economic world. On the other hand, he also took digs at the fact that at Joe Biden in terms of the relations between U.S. and China currently as well. But on the other hand, he said that in order to make America great and glorious again, he has announced his candidacy for the presidency of the United States for the elections of the 2024 round. Well, all right. We also have Rohit Sharma joining us from the Mumbai studios to give us more details about this.
Right. Nivedana, thank you very much for that. Joining us right now, of course, is Mr. Sharma right now from Washington. Mr. Sharma, good morning. Thank you for speaking to us on Republic TV. That speech, a lot of people would say that it was full of Trumpisms. How do you see his bid for the next presidency? And do you think that perhaps this time it's going to be all the more difficult, given the results that have come in from the midterm? The red wave everybody talked about is just been a ripple, isn't it?
Well, he is Donald Trump after all. If you go back to the summer of 2015, when he announced his first time he was running, nobody gave him a chance. Everybody thought he was in it to just make sure his TRPs for his TV show went up. So, you obviously cannot take Donald Trump out of the equation. He has served as a president. He has a lot of following, cult following to say. And there are candidates that have won, that have used his MAGA platform. The most surprising thing is that he has decided to sort of announce it pretty much 2 years before election, and which is unprecedented. Usually people wait until spring or the summer of the year before, so that would have been at least April or June of 2023. But the fact that Donald Trump has stick to his guns, he's come out. Everybody was anticipating a big red wave, and I think that was his initial plan, was to basically come out the Tuesday and say, hey, what, we had a big red wave and now I'm running. The fact that he did not bow down, the fact that he's still stuck, sticking his neck out there and saying, I'm going to do this again in 2024, speaks to old Trumpism. Again, this is unprecedented. I think he's going to be running by himself until somebody else announces they're going to run against him. He's trying to clear the field right now. We've obviously heard from Ambassador Nikki Haley, who had famously said in the summer that if Donald Trump was going to run, she is not going to announce that she was going to run. So we'll have to now wait and watch how many candidates actually jump into the primary with President Trump. But again, if that speech, that he gave today served as a reminder of 2015, he pretty much said exact same things what he said in 2015. But I think the thing that stuck with me, he called President Xi Jinping as king. And I think that was pretty, taking a big dig at the Chinese premier.
Right, absolutely. And that was something that I wanted to ask you as well. He announces this bid right as the G20 meets in Bali. And the visuals that came out of there weren't really spectacular for Mr. Biden because, he almost rushed to meet him. And in that sense, Trump, of course, wanting once again to put himself as the defender of America against the Chinese. And that's something, that will resonate with a lot of Americans. Do you think that is something that will work for him?
Well, his bravado and his machismo that he's known for, it was a full display today when he called out. Again, I think one takeaway I would say from G20 was Joe Biden agreeing to work with China. And again, Donald Trump coming out and saying, you can't, and there are different ways he wants to deal with China. So yes, there would be some understanding of Trump thoughts. I mean, some understanding within the Beltway as to where Trump is heading with this. But again, we've seen in the past. I actually have to go back to two statements. One made by Donald Trump when he said, he understands Xi Jinping like nobody else, and President Biden saying the exact same thing, that he's met Xi Jinping since 2011, and he understands Xi Jinping better than nobody else. So I think both of them are trying to appeal to the same audience. But again, when it probably would come down to voting, I don't think people are going to pay too much attention to this. Again, Americans vote for most largely for domestic issues, as we've seen in the midterms. So I think for President Biden, the biggest scare would be if the economy does not turn around in 2024. That would be his biggest scare.
Right, and he did mention that. He said that great countries are actually great countries that follow great economics. But I wanted to bring you back to the other part of it. How difficult is it going to be for him to win support from the Republicans? Because there is already indication that perhaps that support may be waning. There are younger people, for instance, of course, the Florida governor who's being talked about already. So do you perhaps think that support from the Republicans this time round may not be as forthcoming as the last time round?
Well, the people I have spoken to, Nupur, and some of his voters that voted for him in 2016 and 2020, they also seem to think that he's too old. They want somebody young. They want somebody who can use the Trump policies, the MAGA platform, but somebody who's not that extreme. So you're right in saying that he probably has to go back and win those votes back. It's not going to be easy. 1 week is too long in politics. It's 2 years from now. He has to go back. He has to do his rallies. He will take on in a crowded field. There's going to be Mike Pence, Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, probably Mike Pompeo. So there's going to be a very crowded field. And he probably has to come out, and we'll probably see what tactics he uses this time. So he has to win over those voters. He has to get that nomination. And you're right, it's not going to be easy. But again, I say this with caution, before. He is Trump. He's defied everything, all the policy books, everything. So it'll be interesting to see what he does now. When the start of the interview, as I said, nobody had ever announced candidacy for the White House 2 years into it. So it's just interesting as to see what Donald Trump does next. One big aspect of that is what happens here from now on in the next 2 years in terms of what Republicans do to Biden's legislative agenda? Do they stick to what Donald Trump, laid out today? Do they go and, work with the old Washington compromise with Joe Biden to deliver him some victories? We'll have to wait and watch. But it is going to be a little uphill battle for President Donald Trump to come out and say, hey, give me this nomination. I'm going to beat Joe Biden in 2024.
Right. Mr. Sharma, one last question before I hand it over back to Nivedana. I wanted to ask you, how much of a difference do you think the resurrection will make? Now, because Trump's presidency, one of, something that stayed with people across the world are the images that came out the day of the Capitol riots. Now, how much do you think that's going to weigh on the voters' mind? Because that, in a sense, was seen to be a challenge to democracy. Now, that we do know that there are proceedings that are still on against us. What's your take on it? How much do you think that will impact his presidential candidature?
It will, Nupur, but it is hard to say. The fact is that there was this. And I don't want to, let me put it this way. There were people who thought that Donald Trump was done on Jan 6th. He's not going to come out and come out and ask for votes or be active in politics. He's going to get impeached and be done. But the fact that he's still fighting it through, the fact that he's still trying to have his base rally behind him. I mean, the amount of money his super PAC has been able to raise, it's humongous. So it probably would play in the minds of some independents, maybe some Democrats who would not vote for Donald Trump. But I think his base that he was able to rile up on January 6th, to them, I think they still see him as a victim. They still believe that the 2020 election was stolen for Donald Trump, and they're wanting to give him another chance in 2024.
Right.
All right.
Rohit, this is Nivedana here. I'm asking you another question about the fact that now he has filed for the election. Thank you, Nupur, for joining us and getting us the latest inputs on that as well. My question to you, Mr. Sharma, would be the fact that his in his speech he was talking about immigration and the southern border wall as well, evoking the usual rhetoric, maligning migrants as rough people. But on the other hand, he's also gone on to state that he followed it up, in fact, with we will defeat the radical left Democrats that are trying to destroy our country from within. Now, earlier, of course, he's come up with terms like the China virus and the Islamic terrorism, but this time around in this speech, he's talking about unifying the country. How do you view that?
Well, you know what? It is interesting, right? Is it not? Because in 2015, he said murderers and rapists from southern borders. So he's probably trying to get, cater towards the Hispanic votes. He's trying to make sure that Hispanic votes could probably, fall for his presidency and for the Republican Party. But again, as long as Stephen Miller, who is his advisor and who probably, sort of devised a lot of those harsh immigration policies under Donald Trump, as long as he's around, I think it'll be very difficult for Donald Trump to give a message of unifying or building something or, trying to end the polarization that exists. As a matter of fact, probably you say this, his Stephen Miller, who is his advisor, sent out leaflets to a lot of people saying that people should only vote for white people in the midterms. So it is, it's not going to be forgotten. And as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he, as I said, he has an uphill task. And Jeb Bush, I just saw a tweet from him. He said this was a very low energy performance. So knives are definitely out for Donald Trump.
Right. Also with the fact that he had spoken earlier about making that Hindu Holocaust. So in a sense, the influence of the Indian diaspora as well is what Trump will be looking at, the influence of the same.
In the swing states, yes. I think we've had some studies that have been able to indicate that there are a few counties and few districts within America in swing states. There is a lot of Indian Americans that do vote, and that could possibly swing the election or the state towards one party or the other. In terms of Hindu Holocaust, I mean, that was an idea proposed by one of the organizations in the U.S. that has been closely associated with President Trump. Election promises, politicians are same everywhere, I would say, Nivedita. So we'll have to wait and watch what happens. But the fact that he's actually able to give that voice, to Indian Americans and to Hindus, I think that definitely would be taken in a very positive context by a lot of people in America.
All right. We thank you, Mr. Rohit Sharma, for joining us on Republic TV and giving us your viewpoints of the fact that, of course, Donald Trump has gone ahead and filed for the 2024 presidential elections. We'll continue to track that particular story.